Part 1. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 1. There was a tingling pain in her neck, as if something was biting her, like a ferret's claws scratching her neck, but the pain was slightly different. Your Highness, the young man's voice echoed in his ears, Your Highness, I. The pain in his neck became clearer and clearer, and Chu Qing Huang suddenly raised his hand and waved it. Bang! The boy was knocked over by her palm and fell off the bed. When Chu Qing Huang opened his eyes, there was an evil look in his eyes. Kick, kick, kick. A burst of messy footsteps suddenly came, and a man in white and brocade robes, surrounded by a dozen guards with swords, hurried in. After scanning the hall for a week, the man looked at Chu Qing Huang. The disgust in his eyes was well hidden, and his handsome face showed a look of disbelief. What are you doing? That expression looked like he was shocked and angry when he saw his wife having an affair with someone. Chu Qing Huang didn't say anything. He slowly sat up from the bed and silently looked at the gorgeous and noble palace. The carved beams and painted buildings are magnificent. The colorfully embroidered cloud curtains drooped down, and the Fengming Palace lanterns hanging from high places illuminated the palace with bright lights. It was roughly similar to the dormitory she lived in before, but the style of this dormitory was too extravagant and did not suit her temperament. Turning her eyes slightly, Chu Qing Huang's eyes darkened as she landed on the man she kicked out of bed. The young man was dressed in black and had a slender figure. He had already stood up in the shortest possible time and was now kneeling motionless on the ground. His posture was respectful, but he looked a bit unruly for no reason. Ink-black hair fell down in front of his forehead, but it did not cover half of the eagle pattern mask on his face. But these are not the point. The point is that he is not in the right state at this time. Even though he is restraining himself with a strong sense of self-control, he still cannot hold his hands hanging by his side and turn white from clenching. There are even blue veins popping out, as if he is enduring extreme pain. Big pain. Chu Qing Huang spent the shortest time sorting out the situation in his mind. As a princess shadow guard, not only did I offend the princess, but I also resorted to poisoning? I don't know how to live or die, a cold voice came from the man in white robe. Feng Jinzi looked at Chu Qing Huang coldly, Please, Your Highness the Princess, order Fu Kang to be executed immediately. Chu Qing Huang's thoughts were interrupted and she was a little unhappy. She looked up at him expressionlessly, Go out and kneel. The young man in black pursed his thin lips slightly and was about to stand up and leave when he heard Chu Qing Huang speak again, Feng Jinzi, I am talking about you. What? Feng Jinzi looked at her in disbelief, Chu Qing Huang. Chu Qing Huang repeated coldly, I asked you to go out and kneel, don't you understand? When Feng Jinzi heard this, a look of anger suddenly appeared on her face, Your Majesty the princess, is so impatient that you want to have sex with a man. As soon as these words came out, the air in the hall instantly dropped to freezing point. The color in Chu Qing Huang's eyes gradually condensed, and he looked at Feng Jinzi as if he were looking at a dead person. However, Feng Jinzi seemed not to notice, and his scornful and sarcastic voice sounded emotionless, other than disgust or disgust, Chu Qing Huang, if this trick is your way of trying to anger me, then I tell you, even if you no matter how hard I try, I will never compromise with you. It's impossible for me to fall in love with you in this life. I am forced to marry you by imperial edict. You used your princess privileges to force it. You can force me, but you can't control my feelings. I like Yiling, and she is the only one I like. You got my person, but you can't get my heart. Listen to me, I don't like you. I will never like you in this life. Every sentence was emphasized, like a hysterical roar. Shut up. Chu Qing Huang, if you still want some dignity, please don't use such despicable methods in the future. I told you to shut up, didn't you hear? Chu Qing Huang suddenly raised his hand and waved, and the man who was still shouting angrily was instantly thrown out by a strong force. His cold eyes fell on the man's face, and the girl's voice "Are you being said, you dare to offend me and speak rudely to me? You are so brave." Feng Jinzi was thrown to the ground so hard that stars appeared in his eyes, and his face was twisted in pain. "Chu Qinghuang, are you crazy?" Chu Qinghuang stared at the man who fell to the ground expressionlessly, and said in a cold voice, "Feng Jinzi, you have offended me. According to the royal family's laws, it is not an exaggeration to be executed on the spot." Feng Jinzi's expression froze, and when he was about to get up, he slowly stopped. He looked up at Chu Qinghuang and his eyes became gloomy. "What did you say? Can't you understand what I said?" Chu Qinghuang looked coldly. Feng Jinzi stood up, brushed his sleeves, and looked at Chu Qinghuang with disdain. "What are you doing again? Do you think you can attract my attention and make me fall in love with you? Chu Qinghuang, I'm telling you. Come here," Chu Qinghuang suddenly shouted coldly. Although his voice was hoarse, he did not conceal his cold and stern aura. Feng Jinzi's voice stopped, and then he heard the sound of footsteps. 4 guards wearing armor and black robes quickly came in from outside the palace, and they all knelt down on one knee. "Your Highness the Princess. Feng Jinzi is disrespectful to me. He has insulted and abused me. He will be dragged out and given a hard beating." What? Not only did Feng Jinzi's expression change suddenly, but the 4 guards kneeling on the ground were also stunned. "Your Highness, Princess. Did they hear it correctly? Is Her Royal Highness the Princess going to drag the consort Feng Jinzi out to fight? What are you still standing there for?" The girl's voice was cold and pleasant, but it was cold and hard and could not be refused. "Drag him out." The 4 guards were sure that they had heard correctly. The princess did ask them to drag the prince consort out and beat him with a stick. Yes, the 4 people's expressions brightened and they answered loudly, "Subordinates, obey your orders." After the words fell, the 4 guards stood up and dragged Feng Jinzi out like wolves and tigers. They had long disliked this prince consort. Relying on the princess's love for him, he really regarded himself as the king of heaven, belittling and mocking him everywhere, bossing others around in the princess's mansion, beating and scolding this and that at will, looking down on others, and even ignoring the emperor's most beloved princess. "Do you really think you are made of gold? What are you doing? Let me go." Feng Jinzi was dragged out of the door roughly, and then he reacted from his stagnation and shouted, "How dare you be rude to me? Please forgive me, I am following the orders of Her Royal Highness the Princess, so I can only wrong you, Your Highness." Feng Jinzi couldn't believe it, and shouted out of control, "Chu Qinghuang. You are the one who forced me to marry you, and you are the one who used despicable means. You don't know how to reflect, but you are the first to complain. You are so despicable and shameless. Shut his mouth and add another 20 strokes of the board." The cold and calm order came from the hall, bloodthirsty and ruthless. Feng Jinzi's face changed completely. He wanted to say something else, but soon, the thing that the guard stuffed into his mouth blocked all his sounds. He was then pressed to the ground, and the heavy board fell down with a crackling sound, and his face turned pale in pain. "Woo woo woo. Chu Qinghuang." The 4 guards had long disliked him, and they had been bullied too much. Now they had used all their strength to hit him, hitting him in the weak but not fatal places. The pain made Feng Jinzi almost roll on the ground. All the screams were blocked in his throat. How could he still have a trace of grace? The servants in the princess's mansion heard the noise and all gathered around involuntarily. Seeing the prince consort being pressed to the ground and beaten with a stick, and the beating was so brutal that the white pants under the robe were already bloody in a few seconds, everyone's face changed drastically, not knowing what happened. The prince consort was beaten? What's going on? Didn't the princess like the prince consort the most before? Although Feng Jinzi, as a consort who was granted marriage, has been extremely dissatisfied since he married the princess, always mocking the princess and never willing to eat at the same table with the princess. In fact, according to the royal rules, the consort is not qualified to eat with the princess unless summoned by the princess. But the princess likes him and is willing to break all the rules for him, but Feng Jinzi is ungrateful and does not appreciate the princess's kindness at all, turning his face away everywhere. The princess has been tolerant, because she likes him, so she compromises, but the more the princess gives in, the more Feng Jinzi gets worse, so that from the initial indifference and dissatisfaction to the later mockery, and now, he almost dares to insult and abuse the princess. I didn't expect that he would be beaten in public today. Did the princess suddenly come to her senses, or did the sun rise from the west? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 2. Feng Jinzi was taken out. The guards who entered with swords looked at Chu Qinghuang's stunning and cold face, lowered their heads in panic, and quickly retreated. The hall returned to silence. Chu Qinghuang said coldly, "Come here." The black-clothed boy heard the words, as if he couldn't believe what he heard. His thin body trembled slightly, and his voice was slightly hoarse. "Subordinates, subordinates dare not." "Don't dare what?" Chu Qinghuang looked at him expressionlessly. "Disobey." The boy leaned over and kowtowed. "Subordinates are guilty of death." So much nonsense, the extremely indifferent voice sounded, like the frost wrapped in the cold winter of December, making people shiver with cold. "Come up." The boy's face was pale under the mask, and his thin lips were tightly pursed, but he still restrained the burning feeling in his body that was almost boiling. He respectfully performed a great salute with a farewell meaning. The noble princess of Ziki, who protected the country, was cruel and tyrannical by nature, like a demon, but she was a treasure held in the hands of the emperor. Those who dare to offend her will either die or live a life worse than death. It is true that Fu Kang was poisoned, and it is also true that the orders of the protector of the country princess cannot be disobeyed. But these are not reasons to escape the death penalty. So, he is indeed saying goodbye. It is the protector of the country princess Chu Qinghuang who is cruel and cold by nature. She often whips the warriors in the mansion, and the shadow Fu Kang who stays beside her is the one who suffers the most, and is covered with bruises all year round. Except Feng Jinzi, everyone in the princess's mansion is afraid of Chu Qinghuang. Fu Kang got up and climbed up from the foot of the bed. The new and old overlapping scars on his tall and thin body became more and more obvious, which shows how cruel the protector of the country princess has always been to him. Chu Qinghuang looked at him without saying a word, saw the white and tight corners of his mouth, and saw the sweat on the ends of his hair. His eyes moved slightly upwards and fell on the mask that covered half of his cheek, and said lightly, "Take off the mask." Fu Kang's face changed rapidly when he heard this. Chu Qinghuang couldn't understand his emotional changes at this moment. Logically, a shadower like him should have no expression changes all year round, and his emotions are always well hidden. Although he couldn't help himself today, he showed stronger self-control than ordinary people. So, he shouldn't be unable to control even a little emotional fluctuation. But this is not important for the time being. If he doesn't solve this life-threatening poison, he will be tortured to death in a cup of tea at most. He is her shadower, and he can only be hers in life and death in this life. For the time being, she doesn't plan to watch him die. Seeing him hesitate, Chu Qinghuang's expression was cold. "Disobey." Fu Kang's face turned pale again, and the whole person was stiff like a stone sculpture. His drooping expression seemed to be in extreme pain, but he couldn't disobey the order after all, and slowly reached out to take off half of the mask on his face. Chu Qinghuang thought that the mask on his face was to cover scars or ugly birthmarks, but when the mask came off his cheek, she couldn't help frowning. It was clearly a perfect face, except that it looked a little whiter than other parts because of the mask covering it for many years. There was no damage at all. This face could even be called finely carved, handsome and not like a shadow. So why did he react like this? Chu Qinghuang had doubts in her mind, but she didn't have time to think more for the time being. She raised her hand to the back of his neck and injected the cold true energy into him little by little, relieving the boiling burning sensation in her body. The boy's mind gradually regained clarity, and his body also calmed down little by little. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 3. The Ziki protector of the nation princess maiden name is Chu Qinghuang, and she is only 15 years old. Before her soul entered her body, she had seen the life of this woman in the shortest time possible, like a horse-drawn tour. Chu Qinghuang is the seventh among the princes and princesses. She is only 15 years old this year, not yet married, and not even qualified to leave the palace to set up a household, but Chu Qinghuang is an exception. Her mother, concubine Duan, had made great contributions during the emperor's personal rule and was favored by the emperor for more than 10 years. Chu Qinghuang was also favored by the emperor and was even given the title of protector of the nation princess early on. Even the name Qinghuang was given by the emperor himself, which means noble. If this princess follows the normal trajectory, she should live a life of wealth and prosperity without worries. However, she just doesn't play by the rules. Since she learned to walk, Chu Qinghuang has shown many differences from normal people. She is born violent and has a bad temper. The eyes of a little child are frighteningly cold, which is completely inconsistent with her exquisite and beautiful appearance. When she was 3 or 4 years old, she tore off a palace maid's arm, revealing her extraordinary brute force. The emperor and the empress dowager were shocked. In addition, she was obsessed with martial arts. The emperor tried to find a master to teach her martial arts, but Chu Qinghuang was gifted. She could learn the martial arts taught by the master in one go. She could defeat her master in at most half a year, and even broke her master's ribs. From the age of 5 to 10, the emperor found a master for her almost every year, one more powerful than the other, but without exception, every time the master who taught the apprentice would be injured before Chu Qinghuang finished learning, the lightest being broken hands and feet, and the worst being life. Gradually, the reputation of the seventh princess's tyranny spread far and wide, and almost everyone knew it. Being the seventh princess's master became a nightmare that everyone avoided. Later, the emperor directly ordered Shadow to be her master. Ziki has a dark chamber that specializes in training shadows. Everyone who can come out of the dark chamber alive is a top master, and Fukang is the king among the top. The seventh princess entered the dark pavilion to learn martial arts at the age of 12, and began to challenge all the shadows in the dark pavilion at the age of 13. She was like a robot without pain. She didn't care if she was injured or bleeding, and she was ruthless when she beat people to death. Except for Fukang, almost all the shadows she challenged became her defeated opponents. The reputation of the seventh princess of Ziki, who was cold and bloodthirsty like a demon, made people in the entire imperial capital city terrified. And Fukang, the shadow master of the dark pavilion, was an unbeatable master of Chu Qinghuang. At the age of 14, Chu Qinghuang, who had challenged Fukang 3 times in a row but never defeated him, asked him to be her own shadow in anger. She wanted to tame this unruly and extremely arrogant shadow. She couldn't wait to press down his arrogant head, break his unruly back, make him crawl on the ground, and become the most humble dog around her. The emperor's promise doomed this shadow to a tragedy in his life. Once a shadow recognizes a master, he must obey her in everything and follow her orders for the rest of his life. This is the rule that the dark pavilion engraved into the bones of the shadows with blood when training them. So Fukang, who recognized Chu Qinghuang as his master, began his short nightmare-like life. He was often whipped and tortured by the cruel and violent seventh princess until he was dying, but he had to fight for his last breath to fulfill the duties of the shadow and protect her safety. The shadow had overdrawn his life early due to the harsh and continuous training since childhood. Under Chu Qinghuang's fierce torture every now and then, his body was increasingly damaged. His life ended at the age of 26. And Chu Qinghuang, the princess who was originally doted on by the emperor and the daughter who was placed high hopes by the emperor, the title of protecting the country was once the emperor's greatest wish, but because of her excessive cruelty and terrible martial arts and methods, the emperor and the princes were afraid of her. The court officials were extremely afraid of her and hated her, but no one dared to offend her. The imperial capital directly took the man she liked into the imperial court and made him a concubine. In this feudal imperial system where men were superior to women, she took her heresy to the extreme. Even the Empress Dowager and the Emperor did not dare to say anything about it. But later, because of her excessive obsession with Feng Jinzi, Chu Qinghuang, the extremely terrifying female devil in the eyes of everyone, could not escape the fate of being calculated. The emperor used her as a tool for marriage and used her to deal with the powerful vassal king. Feng Jinzi and concubine Feng used her tyrannical means to support the third prince to ascend the throne. When everything was settled, the rabbit died and the dog was cooked, and the donkey was killed after it was done with its mill. In the autumn of the following year after Shadow Fukang was tortured to death by her, Chu Qinghuang also ended her 24-year-old life under Feng Jinzi's cup of poisoned wine. Chu Qinghuang's death made the whole Ziki people feel relieved. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 4. The sound of the board hitting someone outside was clearly heard in the hall. Chu Qinghuang saw that the boy's face had returned to normal. She slowly withdrew her hand. The next moment, she saw Fukang turn over and get out of bed neatly, put on his clothes in the shortest time, and kneel straight on the ground again. His eyebrows were slightly lowered, and he looked submissive and submissive. Chu Qinghuang knew that this boy was actually always unruly in his bones. He had been tortured by Chu Qinghuang and never gave in. Chu Qinghuang asked him to beg for mercy, and used various means to force him and torment him. He just gritted his teeth when he was in great pain. Although the shadow could not resist the master, he always maintained the backbone of the shadow who would rather die than surrender, and retained his unique arrogant stubbornness. Although the more stubborn he was, the more Chu Qinghuang's strong anger was aroused again, and in exchange for more severe torture, he never begged for mercy once. According to Chu Qinghuang's temper, this time the shadow was poisoned and offended her. With her methods, Fukang would have to take off 3 layers of skin if he didn't die. Fukang obviously knew Chu Qinghuang's temperament, so he would not defend himself at all, but would silently endure all the methods Chu Qinghuang used on him until he exhausted the last bit of vitality and closed his eyes. Her eyes fell silently on his handsome face, and Chu Qinghuang said calmly, "How old are you this year?" After Fukang came to Chu Qinghuang never talked to him in a casual way, except for orders and torture. So Fukang was stunned for a moment, and then he lowered his eyebrows and replied, 17. Chu Qinghuang didn't speak. 17 years old, still young, 9 years away from the death of 26 years old. She remembered that in the last few years, because Chu Qinghuang became more and more disgusted with him, the torture became more and more severe, which led to the serious damage of his body. It is only the 2nd year since he was asked to stay with Chu Qinghuang. His body has not been damaged too seriously. With some good medicine, he should be able to recover. Your Highness, the guard knelt outside the palace and reported, the prince consort fainted from the pain. Chu Qinghuang came back to her senses and said calmly, have you finished beating him with 50 boards? The guard replied cautiously, not yet. After all, Feng Jinzi had always been the princess's favorite, and he was born in the prime minister's mansion. Even if they disliked him, they really didn't dare to beat him to death. Then continue by pouring water on him to wake him up, Chu Qinghuang said indifferently, just keep him alive. Yes. Chu Qinghuang sat quietly for a moment, sorted out her thoughts, and got up from the bed. Fu Kang stepped forward to put on her shoes first. The young man knelt on the ground. His slim black clothes perfectly outlined his smooth back, and even his neck was slender and beautiful. She was not someone who would be fascinated by beauty, but she still couldn't understand why the violent princess had the heart to destroy such a rare shadow player who was outstanding in all aspects. Chu Qinghuang watched quietly. After putting on his shoes, the boy knelt and took a step back. He was always respectful and did not overstep the mark. Walking out of the bedroom, Chu Qinghuang saw the guards bring a basin of cold water and mercilessly splash it on Feng Jinzi, who was lying on the ground. The eldest son of the Feng family, who was indignant and sarcastic just now, was lying on the ground like a dying dog, trembling with pain. His hair covered his pale face, and there was a shocking blood stain on his pants under his robe. The servants who were watching saw the princess coming out and knelt down to pay their respects. Chu Qinghuang didn't say anything. He looked at Feng Jinzi lying on the ground with a very indifferent look and turned away indifferently. Woo, woo woo woo. A weak and painful voice sounded, and because of the trembling in the voice that could not be ignored, it naturally sounded a bit weak. Woo woo. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows slightly, stopped, and turned to look at him. Do you have anything to say? Seeing this, the guards were afraid that the princess would be soft-hearted towards Feng Jinzi again, and they couldn't help but stop swinging the board. In fact, they were also nervous at this moment. Just now, out of dissatisfaction with Feng Jinzi, they beat him really hard. But the princess has always liked Feng Jinzi. Although she didn't know why she was angry and punished Feng Jinzi today, she saw Feng Jinzi's miserable appearance now. If they couldn't help but feel distressed again, they were afraid that they would suffer. Feng Jinzi raised his head with difficulty and looked at Chu Qinghuang. Chu Qinghuang raised his hand and signaled the guards to take out the thing stuffed in his mouth. The guards did so. Chu Qinghuang. Feng Jinzi had no time to speak, and he spoke hoarsely, his voice full of gloomy and resentful questioning. You have lost your mind. It seems that the prince consort has not learned his lesson yet. Chu Qinghuang's voice was indifferent. Block him and continue to beat him. After saying that, he turned back to the palace. Feng Jinzi's pupils shrank suddenly, and just as he was about to speak, the guard had rudely stuffed the cloth back into his mouth, and the board was smashed down again, only to make him black in front of his eyes and almost die of pain. Back in the palace, the maid Jinlan came in to serve after getting permission, and whispered, "What happened to the prince today?" Chu Qinghuang looked at her. "Your Highness has always been very fond of young Master Feng, why today?" Chu Qinghuang said indifferently, "Feng Jinzi violated the rules and dared to insult me. If I report it to the emperor, it would not be too much to kill him. A mere beating is already a bargain for him. With the emperor's current doting on the seventh princess, offending the princess is equivalent to offending the emperor. Even if it is the son of the prime minister, he can be sentenced to death. What's more, the emperor has long been dissatisfied with the prime minister's mansion, and all he needs is an excuse to vent. I know your highness is kind." Jinlan ordered the other maids to prepare hot water for the princess to bathe, and then continued, "It's just that your highness has been very indulgent to the prince consort in the past, and today I don't understand." "Your highness is kind?" Chu Qinghuang pulled the corner of her lips imperceptibly. The original owner was not a kind person. From today on, all the privileges that the prince consort has in the princess's mansion will be cancelled, and there is no need to treat him too favorably. Chu Qinghuang's eyebrows were cold, and there was no special expression on her beautiful face. "You will notify them later that all matters in the princess's mansion must be reported to me, and the prince consort will no longer have the power to issue orders on my behalf." Jinlan was relieved and responded respectfully, "Yes. Although she didn't know what made the princess suddenly become so wise, such a change was obviously very good. Those who were loyal to Her Highness hated Feng Jinzi and wished that Her Highness would divorce him immediately. But His Highness's temperament seems to be a little different from before. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 5. When Jinlan took off her hair ornaments, Chu Qinghuang sat quietly in front of the diamond-shaped mirror, looking at the childish face of the girl in the mirror. It was obviously a very beautiful face, but it was a little slow in development. The girl was 15 years old, but her appearance looked more childish than her actual age. She looked only 13 or 14 years old. She had a beautiful body and delicate face. Her small face was as big as a palm, and her eyes were clear and transparent. The slightly upturned corners of her eyes had a cool and charming luster. However, this luster should belong to the current Chu Qinghuang. If the original owner was still alive, it would probably be more appropriate to say that she was violent. Her eyebrows and eyes were as indifferent as ice and snow, her skin was white and tender, and she had a pair of red lips that were especially beautiful. The color was full and lustrous, and she was beautiful and charming. The Princess of Ziki, who protected the country, was definitely a beautiful girl who could overwhelm the whole country. And her status was quite noble. However, no matter how noble she is, this little princess is really a weirdo. She is obviously gifted in martial arts and can be called a genius, but she is obsessed with men. At a young age, she learned to fill the backyard with men. When she fell in love with Feng Jinzi, she asked the emperor to grant her marriage, completely disregarding the dignity of the Feng family's legitimate son as a man. That's not all. If any young man in the imperial capital is handsome, she will come to serve the emperor. Her behavior is shocking. Her princess mansion now has a son-in-law and 4 servants. It is obviously inconvenient to stay in the palace with such behavior. After all, the emperor's concubines live in the inner courtyard of the deep palace, and outsiders are not allowed to enter. So Chu Qinghuang asked her father to grant her a mansion, and moved out of the palace. She became the only princess who had her own mansion before she got married, and enjoyed the treatment of 3 husbands and 4 kings openly. At a young age, she just played a rebellious role to the fullest. The title of the Princess Protector of the Nation was given by the emperor when she moved out of the palace at the age of 14. Chu Qinghuang's eyebrows slightly frowned. It was true that the original owner was a Fang girl, but Feng Jinzi was not a good person either. He used Chu Qinghuang's young age, stupidity and ignorance to control her. He always liked to use words to belittle and ridicule her, which made Chu Qinghuang feel that he was different from others, and he did not bow to the powerful. He was a good man who stood up to the sky. In addition, Feng Jinzi was a scholar, thoughtful, eloquent, and well versed in what he could not get. He knew that what he could not get was always the best. He had a firm grasp on Chu Qinghuang. With just a few words, Chu Qinghuang felt guilty and felt that asking the emperor for marriage regardless of his wishes would ruin his career. Chu Qinghuang didn't have much brains. The more guilty she felt, the more she wanted to make up for it. The worse Feng Jinzi's attitude was, the more she felt that he was wronged. Compared with her cruelty and irritability towards other people, Chu Qinghuang was simply a docile and cowardly rabbit in front of Feng Jinzi. As a result, Feng Jinzi became more and more domineering in the princess's mansion, and did not take Chu Qinghuang seriously at all. Chu Qinghuang did not allow anyone to complain to the emperor, and tried hard to please Feng Jinzi. I really don't know how the emperor and concubine Duan taught their daughter to be like this. Fortunately, Chu Qinghuang is still young. Although she has several concubines, she has not had a substantial relationship with anyone so far. As for the drug Feng Jinzi mentioned just now. Whose drug is Fukang from? I'm afraid we have to check it out. Chu Qinghuang tilted her head and looked at the young man in black kneeling in the corner like a shadow, silently, as if he had made himself invisible. Fu Kang. The young man's body trembled slightly, and he knelt on the ground, his voice respectful and dull. I am here. Leaked the news, saying that Feng Jinzi was punished in the princess's mansion and is now dying. Chu Qing Huang said, make sure all the civil and military officials in the court know. Yes. Tomorrow you will go to the dark pavilion in person and pick a few shadow guards to bring to the princess's mansion. Yes. Fu Kang took the order and left. Chu Qing Huang sat alone, staring at the direction he left thoughtfully. Since the emperor took power, Ziki has set up a dark pavilion specifically for training shadows. The purpose is to better concentrate the imperial power and to deal with the most powerful country in the world, Dongling, in order to quickly strengthen its national strength and military strength. The reason why the emperor doted on Chu Qing Huang infinitely was not only because her mother had made great contributions in supporting the emperor, but also because he saw Chu Qing Huang's talent in martial arts, thinking that one day she would be able to lead troops to protect the country and make Ziki as powerful as Dongling. However, Chu Qing Huang's martial arts skills were indeed high, but her intelligence and strategy were completely unrelated to those of a military general. In addition, her behavior became more and more unscrupulous, which led to her falling out of favor and being plotted to death. The Dark Chamber was established not long ago, and there are still many hidden dangers in the chamber. Once the Shadow Guards betrayed, the royal family would face a catastrophe. The first thing Chu Qing Huang has to do now is to take charge of the Dark Chamber and make all the Shadow Guards listen to her and be loyal to her alone. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 6. Your Highness, the sixth princess is here. The maid hurried in and reported respectfully, she is outside shouting to see you. Chu Qing Huang raised her eyebrows slightly. Another person who came to die? The sixth princess Chu Yuling was the one Feng Jinzi always said he liked. Chu Qing Huang had never liked her, but because she didn't dare to offend Feng Jinzi, she maintained a superficial friendship with this sister. Chu Yuling relied on this relationship and naturally thought that she had a close relationship with Chu Qing Huang. She often relied on her status as a sister to care for her sister. She would provoke when she should, and she was unambiguous when she should give her a drug. In the process of Chu Qing Huang's later death, she was definitely one of the heroes. Listening to the noise outside, Chu Qing Huang said calmly, Feng Jinzi was carried to his own courtyard. Yes, Jinlan nodded, Your Highness, do you want to send someone to invite a doctor to see him? Chu Qing Huang said, let the sixth princess go and see him. She will not leave Feng Jinzi alone. Jinlan was slightly surprised. In the past, Her Highness hated to let the sixth princess meet the prince consort. Every time they were intimate, the princess would lose her temper. Today, not only did she severely punish the prince consort, but she also stopped preventing the prince consort from meeting the sixth princess. It seems that she has really given up on the prince consort. Yes, Jinlan agreed, the water in the pool is ready. Your Highness, do you want to go and bathe now? Chu Qing Huang hummed, glanced at Fu Kang who returned quickly after delivering the message, and turned to the back hall. Fu Kang, follow me, others don't have to follow. The maids who were about to follow and serve the princess to bathe stopped immediately and bowed and retreated. Fu Kang did not speak, but stood up silently and followed. Entering the bathing hall, the warm water in the bathing pool was clear, and various fresh petals were floating on the water. The air was filled with fragrance. After Fu Kang came in, he was about to kneel down, but he heard Chu Qing Huang's order, undress. Yes. The slender young man walked forward, lowered his eyebrows and eyes, and helped the princess undress, his eyes drooping, and he did not dare to look around casually. After taking off the clothes one by one, Chu Qing Huang lifted her feet and entered the bathing pool. The warm water surrounded her body, and Chu Qinghuang leaned lazily against the wall of the pool, relaxed her muscles and bones, and closed her eyes slightly. Under the light, her eyebrows and eyes were delicate and beautiful, and the heat shrouded the indifference lingering in the corners of her eyebrows and eyes, showing a rare softness. Fu Kang soon knelt down obediently, silent like a shadow in the dark night. "Come down." Fu Kang pursed his lips, and his hands hanging by his side unconsciously clenched his clothes, clenching his fingertips white. No matter how cold, calm, and emotionless a person is, he still has a basic sense of shame and cannot face the result of dying naked. However, if the master is tough and insists on him dying in this way, he has no way to resist. Die naked? Chu Qinghuang's heart moved slightly. Can she hear the voice in the shadow's heart? Did the original owner have this ability, or did her five senses suddenly open up? I didn't expect that this taciturn shadow's psychological activities were so rich and particularly imaginative. But it's not surprising. Chu Qinghuang, the tyrannical and capricious woman, is indeed good at torturing people in various ways, especially Fu Kang. Under such circumstances today, he thinks that he will be killed as an inevitable result. The only difference is what method Chu Qinghuang will use to torture him to death. And it is obvious that Fu Kang thought the princess wanted to drown him. "What are you doing?" Chu Qinghuang glanced at him indifferently, pretending not to know what he was thinking, turned around and lay on the wall of the pool. "Pinch my shoulders." Fu Kang was stunned again. Perhaps because there were too many surprises today, he was unable to guess the princess's actions for a while, although it was a taboo to guess the master's mind. But the princess today was really different from usual. Fu Kang's eyebrows sank, and he said nothing. He took off his clothes without saying a word and walked down the bath. It was indeed different. Chu Qinghuang thought to himself that because the tyrannical and unpredictable original owner was gone, this body had a new soul, and no matter how similar they were, there would be differences. The smooth black hair was scattered on the woman's snow-white shoulders, and the extremely beautiful picture fell into Fu Kang's eyes, but there was not even a ripple. He hesitated and reached out, carefully pushed Qinghuang's hair to the side of her shoulder, and saw that Qinghuang was not angry because of such an offensive behavior, so he slowly pinched her shoulders. "Who poisoned you?" Chu Qinghuang's voice was cold and coercive. Fu Kang was used to this kind of questioning tone, and could answer calmly, "Feng Jinzi." Although this answer might not make her believe it, Fu Kang did not intend to lie. "Feng Jinzi," Chu Qinghuang said coldly, "you can't even see through this trick, but you were ambushed. Should I say that your defense has deteriorated, or should I send you back to the dark pavilion for retraining?" When the last word fell, Fu Kang knelt in the water. "I am guilty of death." The water in the bathing pool was not deep. Even if he knelt at the bottom of the pool, the water level was just below Fu Wei's neck, so he would not be drowned. "Explain." Fu Kang lowered his eyes and stared at the ripples on the water, and replied, "The wine that Feng Jinzi gave me was given by His Highness." "Drugs were put in the wine?" "Yes." "You knew there was drugs, but you still drank it?" Fu Kang was silent for a moment. "Yes." Chu Qinghuang understood. Feng Jinzi was the original owner's favorite person, and he loved her so much that everyone in the princess's mansion had to listen to him. And Fu Kang was the person the original owner hated the most. She hated him so much that she could torture him to death at any time, any place, and by any means. So since it was the wine given by His Highness, he had to drink it. Even though he knew it was poisonous, he had to drink it. After drinking the wine with added ingredients, Feng Jinzi only needed to pass on Chu Qinghuang's order and tell Fu Kang to serve His Highness the Princess in the palace, and everything that happened later would happen naturally. Feng Jinzi calculated the timing and led people in. When he saw Fu Kang offending the princess, he naturally asked for punishment. And they all knew that even if Chu Qinghuang knew that Fu Kang was being plotted against, she would not think he was innocent, but would take this opportunity to give him a good beating. It was really miserable. Chu Qing Huang thought about it. It seems that it was at this time, after being caught cheating, that the original owner severely punished Fu Kang, so that his bones and lungs were severely injured, and his foundation was destroyed. For a long time afterwards, every night, this strong and proud shadow player could be seen hiding alone in a corner where no one could see him, curled up in pain, like a little animal trapped in despair and on the verge of death. However, even so, he never cried out in pain, and all his sounds were stubbornly suppressed in his throat. The shadow player has a special identity. No matter how strong his ability is, no one will ever care about his life or death, and no one will feel sorry for his experience. All the pain can only be endured silently by one person, and he can only endure it day by day until he is completely free. At that time, she was just a wisp of soul watching from the sidelines. She felt that it was a pity for this person. He suffered so much while alive, and it would be better not to come to this world. The instigator, Feng Jinzi, got a great benefit instead. The original owner felt that he was wronged, so in addition to letting him take charge of the power of the princess's mansion, she also agreed to many of his unreasonable requests. Chu Qing Huang retracted her thoughts. She was originally indifferent and taciturn, and she didn't know what to say at this time. The shadow masters who came out of the dark pavilion of Ziki, those with more powerful skills, actually have a great opportunity to make achievements and lead the military power of generals in the future. Because of the loyalty engraved in their bones and blood since childhood, they don't worry about betraying their master even if they hold power. But the powerful and invincible Fu Kang happened to meet Chu Qing Huang, which was his misfortune. Everything Chu Qing Huang brought to him can only be described by the word tragic. In her opinion, Chu Qing Huang is actually hopelessly stupid. How powerful her martial arts are, how stupid she is. She is of noble birth, has an extraordinary talent for martial arts, and there is an equally powerful shadow master around her. If she is a little less stupid, not so crazy and cruel, she can live a life of infinite glory. Born with such extraordinary conditions and talents, but in the end, he was killed by his own actions. This is really a rare stupidity. From now on, remember your identity well, Chu Qing Huang said, her voice as cold as frost. You are my shadow, and you only obey me. No one in the Princess Guardian's mansion or even the entire Ziki royal family can order you around except me. Fu Kang lowered his eyes. Yes. Chu Qing Huang closed his eyes. Continue. Yes. Fu Kang stood up and massaged her shoulders and neck quietly and gently. There was silence in the hall for a long time. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 7. Feng Jinzi's condition at this time was very miserable, with so many scars that even the doctors who rushed over in a hurry were unable to do anything. Jinzi, a woman in bright palace clothes, walked in and saw Feng Jinzi lying on the bed drowsily. Everything he saw was frightening blood. Her face suddenly changed. What's going on? What happened? How did they serve him? Was Chu Qing Huang suffering from some kind of madness? This is simply unreasonable. The servants waiting in the room lowered their heads tremblingly, not daring to speak. Your Majesty, the injury is quite serious. The doctor frowned, hesitation appearing on his face. He looked with some embarrassment at the blood stains on Feng Jinzi's buttocks and his pants, and he didn't know how to start. I think we should clear the palace. The imperial doctor came to show the prince consort. I really don't dare to do anything. It wasn't that his medical skills were incompetent, but that Feng Jin had a high status and he didn't have the guts to take this risk. Chu Yuling looked around coldly. Why doesn't anyone ask for an imperial doctor? The servants looked at each other. Her Royal Highness the Princess didn't ask for an invitation, so who dares to make the decision without permission? Come here, Chu Yuling ordered, go to the palace immediately and invite Dr. Zhao and Dr. Wang over. Sister Huang is very concerned about my consort. After Chu Qing Huang took a bath, she changed into a pink and white waist dress embroidered with bamboo leaves. Her moist hair fell down her shoulders, showing a bit of coldness. With a lazy look, men and women are not intimate with each other. Is sixth sister openly having intimate relations with the consort? Chu Yuling's face changed again and again, and she looked at Chu Qing Huang in disbelief, who seemed completely different from before. What did you say? Can't sixth sister understand what I'm saying? Chu Yuling's face turned green and white, looking at her in disbelief, completely unaware that Chu Qing Huang had taken the wrong medicine today. Sixth sister, a girl who has not left the palace, comes in and out of my princess's house as if she is in a deserted place, and entering the consort's house is more like being in her own palace. Didn't anyone tell you that your behavior is inappropriate? Chu Qing Huang's voice was cold, completely different from his previous violent and stupid style. Since sixth sister cares so much about the prince consort, how about I give the prince consort to you? Chu Yuling's expression suddenly changed. Seventh sister. Chu Qing Huang looked at her calmly, his eyes so cold that Chu Yuling was frightened. Seventh sister. After taking a deep breath, Chu Yuling stepped forward, gently took Chu Qing Huang's hand, and as if performing acrobatic tricks on her face, she softened her tone and said with a smile, Seventh sister misunderstood what I meant. Misunderstand? Chu Yuling nodded. You know, I have always hoped that you and the consort can be well. This time I heard that Kame lost her temper in the house and beat the consort. I was shocked, for fear that there may be any misunderstandings, or she may be provoked by villains. My sister is still young, and sometimes she still can't distinguish right from wrong. Sixth sister, do you mean I'm stupid? Chu Yuling's face stiffened, then she smiled and said, that's not what I meant. What happened to this idiot today? He choked on every word, as if he had eaten explosives. I mean, didn't Kame like the prince consort very much before? So what if I like you? Chu Qing Huang raised an eyebrow. No matter how much you like someone, you should be punished if you make a mistake. The royal rules do not allow anyone to offend. Chu Yuling smiled reluctantly, but I was indeed stupid before. Chu Qing Huang broke away from her hand and said in a cold voice, but the sixth sister and the prince-in-law are openly close, which I cannot tolerate. Starting today, I have announced that I will divorce Feng Jinzi. Giving him freedom can be regarded as fulfilling the deep love between sixth sister and the prince consort. Chu Yuling's face changed and she could no longer maintain her fake smile. The prince-in-law is the direct son of the prime minister. When Kame fell in love with him, she asked her father for a marriage without the consent of the prime minister and Jinzi. Now that she is tired of it, she can just give up if she wants. What does Kame think of the prime minister's mansion? I am the princess protector. If I want to divorce a concubine who is not abiding by husband's rules, do I still need your consent? Chu Qing Huang's eyes were cold and her voice was soaked in ice and snow, without any warmth. Even if the prime minister, I have nothing to fear when you come in person. Since Feng Jinzi got married to me, he has always been disrespectful. He always insulted me and was disrespectful. He kept saying that the person he liked was the sixth sister. Now I am just let him go free. He should be grateful and shed tears of gratitude. Chu Yuling clenched her hands and looked at her in shock. Sister, how could you say such a thing? That expression and tone made it look like Chu Qing Huang had committed a heinous crime. However, she was really shocked and puzzled. What is going on? Didn't she obey Jin Zian before? It's too late to please Feng Jin, so how dare you say such a thing? Someone must have instigated it, otherwise there is no way this brainless seventh sister would fall out at once. As long as Jinzi gave her a little bit of good looks, she would pounce on him like a dog wagging its tail begging for mercy. Most of the time, Jinzi was indifferent, distant, and sarcastic towards her. She immediately turned her anger on the shadow guards around her, and she would not dare to hurt Feng Jin even a hair. Chu Qinghuang's face was expressionless, and he heard what she was saying clearly, and without missing a word. If you are willing to stay and take care of him, please do it yourself. Chu Qinghuang turned around with a decidedly distant attitude. I am kind and can let him stay in the house to recover from his injuries before leaving. If sixth sister is willing to stay, take care of him. Seventh sister, Chu Yuling's face flushed, as if she was ashamed and angry. How can I, an unmarried princess, stay and take care of him? Will my reputation be ruined if it gets out? Sixth sister, have you ever cared about your reputation when you entered my princess's mansion? Chu Qinghuang glanced at him. When Feng Jinzi's injury heals, let him leave my princess's mansion with a divorce letter. I have something else to do, so I won't chat with you. Sixth sister, please do as you please. Chu Yuling wanted to say something else, but she saw Chu Qinghuang had already stepped out of the door and walked away without looking back. She gritted her teeth, with obvious panic in her eyes, and had no idea what was going on with Chu. In the past, Chu Qinghuang obviously liked Jinzi so much and was willing to give everything for him. What happened today? It's not enough to be beaten for no reason, but she even said she wanted to divorce her husband. How could this be possible? Feng Jinzi must stay here to keep her heart, so that he can help the third prince win the throne. If he is divorced, the prime minister's mansion will become a laughing stock, and if he loses favor in front of his father, the consequences will be disastrous. No, Feng Jinzi must not be divorced. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 8. The seventh princess ordered someone to beat the prince-in-law 50 times. This matter quickly spread and everyone in the court knew about it, causing an uproar inside and outside the palace. The Empress Dowager and concubine Feng couldn't sit still at first, and they said with anger, why is Chu Qinghuang so crazy? Can Jinzi, a weak scholar, withstand a beating? It is simply unreasonable. The AI family has lived like this. Damn, I've never seen someone lynching his own consort, it's so unreasonable. How unethical is that? Concubine Feng's face was ugly and she couldn't hide her anxiety. I heard that the beating was quite severe. I wonder if Jinzi can bear it? The Queen Mother has to make the decision for Jinzi. The Queen Mother sat on the phoenix chair with a sullen face. Her exquisite makeup could not hide the frost on her face. Chu Qinghuang is really getting more and more unruly. In the past 2 years, relying on the emperor's favor, he has done all kinds of deviant things. What's more, concubine Duan doesn't have any rules and can't even control her own daughter. She is allowed to act recklessly outside the palace, which is a disgrace to the royal family. Concubine Feng pursed her lips and said nothing. She didn't want to pay attention to how unbridled Chu Qinghuang was at the moment. She just wanted to know how Jinji was doing. 50-year-old, she couldn't even think about it. Damn Chu Qinghuang, he could really do this. Hand. If Jinzi does anything good, she will make both concubine Duan and her daughter pay the price. The Queen Mother, it's not good. Manager Feng of Renchao Palace hurriedly entered and bowed to report. The guards sent news that the seventh princess wants to divorce her husband. What? The Queen Mother was shocked and said angrily with a livid face, Chu Qinghuang is going to rebel. Concubine Feng's expression turned cold. What on earth is Chu Qinghuang going to do? Feng Ping immediately announced that Chu Qinghuang has entered the palace and the AI family wants to see her. This slave obeys your order. Feng Ping hurried out of the palace with the Queen Mother Yi Ji and rushed to the Princess Protector's mansion. He saw Chu Qinghuang coming out of the mansion. Feng Ping was stunned and hurriedly knelt down. I see Her Royal Highness the Princess. Several guards who followed behind him all knelt down. No matter what the seventh princess's impression was in the eyes of the royal dignitaries and the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty, whether she was stupid or a nymphomaniac, her title of Princess Protector did not allow anyone to offend her, and she was treated as an equal even in front of the concubines in the harem. What's more, Chu Qinghuang is a violent and murderous master. If she is displeased, even if these slaves are killed on the spot, the Queen Mother will not be able to do anything to her. Chu Qinghuang looked down at the chamberlain in the Queen Mother's palace and asked in an indifferent voice, "What's the matter?" "Report to your highness," Princess Feng Ping replied respectfully, not daring to rely on the Queen Mother's influence to put on airs in front of the seventh princess. "The Queen Mother has ordered the small kitchen to prepare some snacks, so that you and young Master Feng can go into the palace to have tea and snacks." After hearing this, Chu Qinghuang spent the shortest time thinking about it in her mind. The Emperor of Ziki was already in his 40s. The queen in the harem was fighting fiercely with the concubines. There were 4 princes among the 7 princesses because the emperor was a young emperor at that time. After he ascended the throne, he filled the harem with drafts early. After he came to power, most of the women who entered the palace first were promoted to concubines. Therefore, the 1st to 5th ranked princes are now eligible to compete for the throne. The empress is currently in charge of the harem. The beautiful and frail concubine Duan is the most favored because of her meritorious service in escorting her, while Feng Jinzi's Aunt Feng Gaifei is the most favored by the Queen Mother. So this can be considered a 3-legged alliance. She ordered Feng Jinzi to be punished today, and she had ordered Fukang to spread the news. Naturally, the Queen Mother and concubine Feng knew about it. Concubine Feng was the first one to be unable to sit still, but Chu Qinghuang's temper was rare in the world. Concubine Feng did not dare to cause trouble without permission, so she could only ask the Queen Mother for help. "Your Highness," Feng Ping raised his head carefully, "don't keep the Queen Mother waiting for too long." Chu Qinghuang glanced at him and said calmly, "I can go by myself. The consort probably won't be able to get up at this time." With that said, he walked directly to the sedan that had been prepared outside. She had originally planned to enter the palace, so there was no harm in stopping by to see the Queen Mother. Feng Ping felt uneasy when he heard her speak so calmly. He felt that Her Highness the Princess was different from before, but he couldn't tell what was different about it. After sitting in the sedan chair, Chu Qinghuang leaned on the soft couch and closed her eyes in deep thought. Feng Ping and the guards followed behind the sedan chair tremblingly. Not long after, the sedan arrived and landed outside the palace gate. Chu Qinghuang got up and got out of the carriage, following Manager Feng to the Queen Mother's Renqiao Palace. The most indispensable thing in the palace is people, eunuchs, guards, maids coming and going on the palace road. When they saw Chu Qinghuang, they all fell to the ground in an instant, fearing that if they knelt a step too slowly, blood would be splashed on the spot. Chu Qinghuang was indifferent. Entering Renqiao Palace, the Queen Mother was sitting in the main seat, and concubine Feng was also there, sitting with her on the lower left side of the Queen Mother. Seeing Chu Qinghuang's arrival, both of them had cold expressions and looked at each other calmly. Xiaoqi the Queen Mother suppressed her displeasure and spoke majestically, "Where is Jinzi? Why didn't you see him come with him? He made some mistakes today and received the punishment he deserved in the palace." Chu Qinghuang sat down on the chair opposite concubine Feng, took the tea from the palace attendant, lowered her eyes and took a sip. "Wait a minute. After the injury has recovered, let him enter the palace to pay his respects to the Queen Mother and the imperial concubine." Concubine Feng's expression changed, and she was about to speak when she heard the Queen Mother say in surprise, "Made a mistake? This child Jinzi has always been gentle and polite, and knows how to advance and retreat. How could he make a mistake? Is there some misunderstanding? Didn't Chu Qinghuang like Feng Jinzi the most before? Even if Jinzi did something she shouldn't have done, she would turn a blind eye and tolerate it. How could it happen today? What happened? Did someone blow something in her ear? Chu Qinghuang didn't say anything. She saw concubine Feng tighten her handkerchief and heard her cursing in her heart, but she didn't care. She just couldn't help wondering, did the original owner Chu Qinghuang have the ability to read minds? Let alone the fact that concubine Feng certainly didn't treat Chu Qinghuang sincerely. If the original owner really had the ability to read minds, she should be able to see that whether it was the Queen Mother, concubine Feng, or Feng Jinzi, they all really used and hated her. How could she still stick to them so mindlessly? Xiaoqi the Queen Mother frowned and looked at Chu Qinghuang thoughtfully. What are you thinking about? No misunderstanding. Chu Qinghuang came back to her senses and pretended not to understand the Queen Mother's implication. Does the Queen Mother have anything else to do? If not, I'll leave first. As she spoke, she stood up, obviously looking like she was going to leave. Chu Qinghuang used to be like this, never taking rules and etiquette seriously, so Qinghuang naturally wouldn't make any changes in this regard. If there was a big change at once, it would arouse suspicion. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 9. Stop, the Queen Mother said angrily, with a gloomy tone. Xiaoqi, do you still have any rules? You are so unruly in front of the AI family. Chu Qinghuang paused slightly and looked at her expressionlessly. When the Queen Mother met her emotionless eyes, she was suddenly startled. Her hands on the armrests of the phoenix chair clenched involuntarily, and her palms felt cold. She hadn't seen Chu Qinghuang look like this for a long time. The last time I saw her was when she was a child. At that time, she didn't know how to control her emotions at all, so she often looked at people with such cold eyes. It was the same in front of the Queen Mother and the Emperor. The Queen Mother often secretly scolded her as a devil. How can any normal child be like that? Such a scary look. But back then, the Duan concubine family had done a good job in protecting the Emperor, and the Emperor blatantly favored Chu Qinghuang, so that the little beast became more and more aggressive, completely ignoring the Queen Mother, Empress, and other concubines. Over the years, the Queen Mother has avoided seeing her whenever she could. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she didn't want to see her more. Xiaoqi concubine Feng stood up. The unhappy expression on her face was gone and replaced with an amiable smile. You used to like that kid Jinzi the most. I don't know what happened today that made you. Are you angry with him? Chu Qinghuang was indifferent and silent. He is the legitimate son of the Feng family and has a distinguished status. His mistake this time was probably just a moment of negligence. A small punishment or a big warning is enough. Don't make yourself angry, concubine Feng said with a smile. When I have the opportunity in the future, I will definitely tell him well. 2 sentences. The imperial concubine is right. Jinzi's status is precious after all, so don't make too much trouble. The Queen Mother spoke at the right time, but her eyes were looking at the teacup on the table. Call an imperial doctor to check his injuries. For the time being, let's keep it first. Qinghuang didn't say anything, turned around and walked out. The expressions of the Queen Mother and concubine Feng suddenly darkened. This little beast. It's simply too outrageous. In front of her elders, she turned around and left indifferently without saying a word. Who knows what she meant? She should listen, the Queen Mother said with a gloomy face. Let the imperial doctor give Jinji a message later. Be nice to Chu Qinghuang in the past 2 days and don't always have a stubborn temper. At the moment, the Emperor is not interested in this. My daughter has high hopes, and it won't do anyone any good to really piss her off. Concubine Feng felt sorry for Feng Jinzi's injury, but she was also worried that the quarrel between him and Chu Qinghuang would not be conducive to her son's fight for the throne. Her expression turned cold when she heard this. Chu Qinghuang is just a piece of shit, except for his brute force. Besides, What is there to hope for? The emperor really loves her too much. The queen mother's voice was deep. The emperor naturally has his own ideas. You just need to let Jinzi restrain Chu Qinghuang. Concubine Feng nodded slowly, yes. However, she didn't know that their thinking was not on the same line as Chu Qinghuang's. They thought that Chu Qinghuang had listened to everything, but in fact, Chu Qinghuang could only listen to it. As for whether she is willing to do it or not, that is her own business and no one else can interfere. After leaving Renshao Palace, Chu Qinghuang went to the Imperial Hospital. This was her first time here. When the imperial doctors heard that the seventh princess had arrived, their faces changed drastically. They all put down what they were busy with and started looking at the chief physician from the imperial hospital, the doctors of different ranks, those who dispense medicines, and those who do miscellaneous tasks. Those who sweep the floor, all come out to welcome. The battle in front of us is really not small. Chu Qinghuang paused for a moment before hearing the chaotic mental activities of the imperial doctors. Why is this living evil god here? I heard that it is common for the seventh princess to kill people. You must not offend this evil god. Although the status of the seventh princess is not as noble as the queen mother and the emperor, she must not neglect her, otherwise her life may be at risk at any time. If you offend the emperor, even if you are dragged out and beheaded, you will still have a moment to breathe. If you offend the seventh princess, you will be killed on the spot. It's just that I don't know what kind of wind blew today, but it actually blew this evil god to the imperial hospital. The imperial doctors in front of them all had earth-colored faces and pale faces, as if they were prisoners waiting to go to the execution ground. Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment, looking at the frightened people in front of him expressionlessly, and said in a cold tone, "What are you doing here, Du Chu? Go ahead and do whatever you need to do, I will get some medicine and leave." Get medicine? All the doctors were confused. The seventh princess came to get the medicine in person? What happened? Are all the servants in the princess mansion dead? Ah no, the point should be who should the princess get the medicine for? Herself. Injured or sick? Why didn't you ask the imperial doctor to check your pulse? Chu Qinghuang saw that they were still standing dumbly, her eyes were getting impatient, and her whole body exuded a cold and ruthless aura. The leading physician trembled, and quickly bowed and said, "What kind of medicine does your highness want, sir?" The old minister will go and match. Medicine for recuperating the body. Chu Qinghuang restrained her breath, and her tone was still cold. Prescribe a little for both internal and external injuries. Yes. Your highness, please wait a moment. I will prepare the medicine right now. The hospital was suddenly extremely busy. It's not an exaggeration, it's really a mess. The chief physician ordered this person to get some medicine and that person to get some medicine. Suddenly everyone inside was busy packing medicines, as if they wanted to pack all the medicinal materials in the imperial hospital for the seventh princess to take away. Chu Qinghuang frowned slightly and was silent for a long time. Not long after, the chief physician personally carried 2 large baskets with several bags of medicinal materials and handed them to her. I have already written down the recipe for how to cook these medicinal materials. I know. Chu Qinghuang said this indifferently, picked up 2 large bags of medicine, and turned to leave. Everyone in the imperial hospital looked at each other, unable to react for a long time. It was not until the Queen Mother sent someone to the imperial hospital and ordered the imperial physician to treat Feng Jinzi's injuries that the imperial physicians realized belatedly that the seventh princess took so many medicines, and it turned out that they were for the prince consort. This made sense, so the imperial physician quickly reported to the Queen Mother that the seventh princess came to the imperial hospital to get medicine in person. After hearing this, the Queen Mother's expression finally looked better. It seems that she still cares about Jinzi. I hope so. Concubine Feng sat down on the chair, her brows still furrowed. I don't know how badly Jinzi was injured. Will there be any danger? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 10. Back at the princess's residence, it was already dark. Chu Qing Huang opened a packet of herbs, carefully checked the ingredients, and called Minjiao, the maidservant in the palace, "Take this packet of herbs and boil it. Boil 3 bowls of water into 1 bowl, and send it over when it's done." Yes, Minjiao accepted the order respectfully. "Your Highness has not had dinner yet, I'll have someone prepare dinner for you." Qing Huang hummed, 2 sets of bowls and chopsticks. When the princess doted on Feng Jin, she would often eat with him, but today Feng Jin was injured and probably couldn't come to eat with the princess. Although Minjiao didn't understand, she just responded respectfully and quickly left. Chu Qing Huang put the other herbs on the table, walked to the low couch in front of the window and sat down, propping up her forehead, looking at the night outside the window expressionlessly, her eyes deep. The palace was quiet. "Your Highness," a guard knelt in front of the door and reported in fear. The 6th princess said that Master Feng was in a dangerous condition. After waking up, he fainted again. "So useless," Chu Qing Huang said in a cold voice, "don't pay attention to him." Yes, the guard retreated. Dinner was quickly prepared, and Jinlan led the maids to put the food and bowls and chopsticks on the table. Although Chu Qing Huang had a bad temper, she was not particular about food, nor did she pay much attention to the pomp and circumstance. It was just that she was a princess after all, and no matter how simple it was much better than that of ordinary people. The maid prepared 6 dishes and 2 soups, half meat and half vegetable. Chu Qing Huang stood up and walked to the table and sat down. "Everyone go down." Yes. The maids put the food and bowls and chopsticks, and filed out. Chu Qing Huang said in a light voice, "Fu Kang." A shadow flashed out from behind the curtain in the corner, knelt down and lowered his eyes, waiting for orders. "I don't ask what shadow has eaten before, but from now on, you will eat with me," Chu Qing Huang said coldly. "Did you hear that?" Fu Kang lowered his eyes. "Yes." "Sit down." Fu Kang was stunned. "Sit down?" Shadow has never had the right to sit. In the past, he trained day and night in the dark room. When he was in front of the master, he either knelt or hid in the dark, or had the opportunity to lie down when he was tortured unconscious. He never had the right to sit. "Do you need me to say it a second time?" Chu Qing Huang tilted her head and her eyes fell coldly on his face. "Or do you need me to teach you what obedience is?" Fu Kang's body was slightly stiff, and he lowered his eyes and said, "I know I was wrong." Chu Qing Huang didn't speak, his expression was as cold as frost. Fu Kang slowly stood up and sat down on the stool in front of the table with a slightly stiff movement. His body was straight, and his eyes always kept a slightly drooping posture, respectful and docile. Chu Qing Huang lowered her eyes to eat, her voice was quiet and cold, "Waiting for me to feed you." The clean and clear voice entered his ears, and Fu Kang's heart flashed a trace of confusion. He stared at the bowl in front of him for a long time before hesitantly picking up the chopsticks. The rice was hot, soft, and sticky with a fragrant taste. "It was different from what I ate before." "What did you eat before?" Chu Qing Huang ate the meal politely, and there was a little more leisure in his cold voice. "When I was in the dark pavilion." Fu Kang put down his chopsticks and answered with his eyes downcast, "Whatever you have." Hearing this, Chu Qing Huang couldn't help but look up at him. He hadn't put the mask back on since he took it off at noon. The 17-year-old boy in front of him had a very good-looking face, not evil, not gloomy or soft, but a kind of clear and elegant like a scroll, with an indescribable, clean like dust-free. Chu Qing Huang was startled by the sentence, and then thought about it, and felt that this statement was extremely appropriate. The dark chamber is a cruel place. Day after day of training is always accompanied by blood and killing. Fu Kang, who can become the first shadow master of the dark chamber, is not only more talented than others, but also has many people who died at his hands in those years. But absolute cruelty is accompanied by absolute simplicity and cleanliness. The mind of the Shadow Master is simple. Loyalty to the Master is an iron rule engraved in the bones and blood. No one can disobey it. In addition, they have no self, no thoughts, no preferences, and naturally no intrigue and interest entanglement. The Shadow Master will not calculate, but will only offer loyalty and obey orders unconditionally. But such a person, who finally survived the cruel training of hell after hell in the dark chamber, was tempered to become the best Shadow Master of the royal family, and recognized a master, but he did not even have the opportunity to truly use what he learned, and was tortured to death by this violent master. Chu Qing Huang lowered her eyes, and a deep and complex emotion flashed across her eyes. She is not a person who is easily soft-hearted. But I have seen people who are too loyal, who follow and trust unconditionally, and who have no suspicion between the monarch and his subjects or brothers. Such precious feelings are the most difficult to give up. When she first came to this strange place, whether it was herself or she accepted the identity of Chu Qing Huang, if she had to choose one person to trust at the moment, then this person could only be Fu Kang. He is her shadow, and after recognizing the master, he will never betray in his life, and will only offer all loyal shadows. It belongs to her private property, at least when she is still Chu Qing Huang, it can only be her private property. She returned to her thoughts and said lightly, "Don't eat raw and cold food in the future, it's not good for your health." Yes. Fu Kang ate a small bowl of rice and a plate of vegetables in front of him. For a man, and a martial artist who needs to consume physical energy every day, he really eats a little less. There is nothing to worry about in the future. You don't have to kneel down in front of me.